Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guests are Jay Weidner and Ryder Lee. First, I have a couple of announcements. The first episode of the Forbidden documentary is completed. It will soon be available for you to download or stream on Amazon Prime and other streaming platforms. But right now, you can get a unique limited edition version to download from our website that you won't be able to see on Amazon. Just visit that website. It's forbiddenknowledge.news, or you can get it from Rokfin if you're a Rokfin subscriber, or just click that link right in the description. Check out our friends at BGcast Podcast. They're featured on the Forbidden Knowledge Network. They cover the Great Awakening live and everything it entails. Knowing that the spiritual path and the path of truth walk hand in hand, BGcast offers a positive perspective to the Great Awakening occurring on our planet. From interviews, breaking down complex spiritual and metaphysical principles, conspiracies, occult symbolism, and the paranormal, the goal of BGcast is to spread some much-needed healing that the planet needs right now. Check them out live on Rumble, 6 p.m. Mountain Wednesday, 3 p.m. Mountain Saturdays, as well as all podcast platforms and the Forbidden Knowledge Network. You can now get Forbidden Knowledge News live 5 days a week on Rokfin, Rumble, and our website. The website is forbiddenknowledge.news. It's also the home of the Forbidden Knowledge Network. We feature some amazing podcasts there. You can always get every new episode of Forbidden Knowledge News on Rokfin, Rumble, and all podcast platforms. Sign up on Rokfin. This is where you get our premium content. You also get all the amazing premium content from every other creator on Rokfin. Just go to rokfin.com/FKN Plus or use the link right in the description. Today, I want to welcome back to the show Jay Weidner and Ryder Lee. Jay is a renowned filmmaker, author, and scholar. His body of work offers great insights into the circumstances that have led to the current global crisis. He found sacred mysteries together with his wife, Sharon Rose. Ryder Lee is producer and host of Raised by Giants, which provides a platform for researchers, spiritual teachers, authors, contactees, and experiencers to come together and communicate their studies, observations, thoughts, ideas, reflections, and research, infusing them into common everyday knowledge with new understandings of life and the universe. Jay, Ryder, welcome back. How y'all doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Yes. Yeah, man. Thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed the film. We're going to be discussing it today, JFK X. It brings new possible evidence to light, which would mean that almost every mainstream conspiracy theory and the mainstream theory about his death would be incorrect, and that there is a conspiracy within a conspiracy. Now, in the film, Jay made some very interesting observations about the Zapruder footage based on his knowledge of filmmaking, which now raises all kinds of new questions if this is correct. Now, we've got a lot to get into with this film. Before we do, Jay, what brought you to make this film, and how did you get involved with Ryder?
Well, second question first. A writer interviewed me for his show, and we struck up a friendship through that. And what inspired the film was that accidentally somebody loaded up Oliver Stone's super enhanced version of the Zapruder film on YouTube about 2011, maybe. I can't really remember, but I was involved in researching and I found it and I watched it, like he'd taken each frame and really cleaned it up and blew it up. And I saw the film clearly for the first time. And because I'd seen a lot of junky versions, but I'd never seen, and don't forget, in the film JFK, for which this film was made for, he doesn't show the entire 28-second clip. He just shows you little bits and pieces. So this was really my first time of watching the entire Zapruder film with a clear, very clear version of it. And I saw everything that I talk about in the film right there. I mean, I watched it maybe 15 times and then it disappeared off the internet, never came back. And we never had a really clear version of the Zapruder film available, and so, Ryder and I asked ourselves what would happen if, an experienced filmmaker looked at a really clear version of the Zapruder film. And since we couldn't find one, we realized that there was this technology that's emerging where you could take old films and then restore them until they look like they were shot on digital yesterday. And so we watched the film through that kind of software, and then I relate what I see in there, and then we bring in a bunch of other evidence to back up what I'm saying, which is shocking and very unusual, and very much not in the mainstream of either the government or the conspiracy line. But it does take into account the effect of organized crime and the mafia on all the things that happened on November 22nd, 1963.
Ryder, anything to add about how you got involved with this?
Well, me and Jay, I had interviewed Jay quite a number of times before, and I brought him on talking about something that was completely different than this. It was interviewing him about his Stanley Kubrick films, Kubrick's Odyssey 1 and 2. He made 2 of those, and I had watched those several times, and I wanted to interview him about it. So I watched the Shining. I'm sure everyone is familiar with Jay's theory that's been regurgitated through the community, just like a bunch of other different theories have been regurgitated through the community, and is kind of making a big rise again right now, which is the faking of the moon landing by Stanley Kubrick. And Jay was the one that created that whole theory. And I just watched The Shining over and over and over again every single day. And I didn't really find anything new until the day before I was going to interview him about it. I had found something that I thought answered all the questions of The Shining movie directed by Stanley Kubrick. And I brought him on, and I was talking to him about it, and he was like, yeah, I think this makes a lot of sense. So then I hit him up a couple of months later, and I was like, Jay, we should really do a documentary about this. And Jay's been in retirement for a while, so I was like, yes, I'm going to get Jay out of retirement here. We're going to make a awesome, solid movie, surrounding my theory of what's going on, because it really brings the entire movie together, and it doesn't discount his theory about the moon landing. It actually makes it even better, right? And so we started writing that. Well, Jay started writing that, and then we were like, oh, this is going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of energy to make this Shining film, and yeah, of course, money as well. So we were like, oh, well, let's do like a trilogy, right? Let's just break everything down within our society, and let's take this back to the original conspiracy theory, because JFK is the original conspiracy. That's where really all of these conspiracy theories started popping up, was surrounding the JFK assassination. And I was already familiar with Jay's theory on what had happened to JFK on November 22nd, 1963. And we were like, well, let's just do a film about the JFK assassination, and then we'll just move it forward, and we'll just keep moving it forward. And we're going to make 3 films. This is a first of 3. So there's 2 more in the pipeline, ready to come out.
Excellent.
As soon as we get done with the publicity for this one, we're going to start on the next one. And we should actually, it's up on Amazon Prime. We want to mention that too. So it's cheap. It's less than $2. You can buy 3 lattes and watch it 5 times. So the thing with the film that I think makes it stand out is 2 things, actually. One is what we discover when we look at the Zapruder film, but also I think the way that it was made, it really captured the chaotic time that event occurred, in which everybody thought the world was coming unglued and that they were living in some kind of Fellini movie. And I think that we really captured the zeitgeist of that time period. I was just a little kid, so I can't really say I remember much about it, but I do remember my parents and my relatives and all the grown-ups just being filled with nothing but angst and terror. Really, they were scared. We didn't know what was going on, and and also what's funny about it is when I started writing the movie, I was really worried that it wasn't even going to get to be an hour. And I was telling Ryder, oh my God, we're going to have a 42-minute movie. Nobody's going to pick it up. Because, they have certain limits. I used to be in acquisition at Gaia, and we had limits of what you would take, right? You had to, you pay so much for this much, you pay so much for this much. And, 42 minutes is coming in. You're not going to bring much in. So, but we kept finding more and more incredible film and adding it in, and Bobby Kennedy and his speeches about how literally talking about the deep state. He doesn't say deep state, but he's literally saying in 1962 that this country being run by a government-controlled organized crime, which is the deep state. Just a different way to put it.
Yeah, that's my favorite section of this movie. One of my favorite sections of the movie is we have this whole, in the very beginning, probably around 10 to 15 minutes in, we have this whole section on the mob. And it turns out that RFK, which is JFK's brother, really was going after the mob. And not a lot of people talk about that when they're talking about JFK and doing all this research on JFK. They just kind of leave out RFK, right? But RFK was even more charismatic than JFK was. Which
more of a bulldog too. He was the bulldog, not JFK. JFK was kind of a laid back kind of guy. I mean, he was in the military and military intelligence and all that, but his own personality was, well, he was also suffering from Addison's disease. That might have had some effect. But Bobby was the bulldog. And, it should be pointed out that Bobby was appointed Attorney General not by JFK, but by Joe Kennedy. JFK and Bobby were interviewing people for Attorney General after the election, and Joe walked in the room and said, "What are you doing? You've got your Attorney General right here." And JFK said, "Oh, that's nepotism. I don't know if I want to do it." But the more he thought about having somebody he could really trust, that he knew was a total bulldog, ready to punch in the face, he said, "Yeah, man, bring him on. This is my guy." And I personally believe that Joe Kennedy told RFK to go after the mob. I do. I think that Joe Kennedy and Donald Trump share something in common. Both had dealings with the mob. Both came to realize that if the mob gets in control of the world, we're in seriously deep trouble. And both, in their different ways, tried to undo the mob influence in the United States. And both JFK and Donald Trump utterly failed.
Now, you focus on a few angles in this film surrounding the assassination. One, like you just mentioned, the mob involvement. And I've had plenty of different JFK researchers come on the show and give their different versions and theories about what happened. And across the board, the mob is always involved. And with the mob having the marriage with the CIA, of course, there's going to be involvement there. But do you think that the primary reason for what was to occur next with the so-called assassination was primarily because of his attack on the mob?
Yeah, definitely. 100%. We say other theories in the film, but the main emphasis is the mob. I don't think the mob, I'm really a historian on the mob, okay? It was one of my favorite subjects, especially this time period from 1940 to 1970. And the mob was one kind of mob in 1949 when Joe Kennedy left it, but it was a completely different kind of mob by 1960 when the Kennedys got in. And that mob had become more secret, more willing to compromise, and more willing to off people, but in a way that wasn't as obvious as before. So before, the mob thought it was really cool to come by and shoot somebody in the head in the town, in the middle of the night, have them laying on the street and everybody sees it, right? And get scared that the mob's going to kill them. But now they started suiciding people and car accidents and throwing people off buildings and things to make it more obscure as to what they were really doing to hide their presence. And I don't think the Kennedy brothers understood how vicious the organized crime had become by the time they got elected in 1961. Really
and also we show in the film JFK X, Solving the Crime of the Century, the FBI recording the informant, which was Joseph Miltier. And Miltier is basically telling this FBI informant that's undercover exactly how, if he were to assassinate the JFK, how he would do it. You said that he would do it from one of these office buildings. He said that he would take a high-powered rifle up there. He would break it down, because you could break it down and take it up there and then unbreak it and bring it back down. And that they would pick somebody up immediately after the assassination, because the FBI informant asked him, well, how would you get away with it? And he was like, oh, well, they wouldn't suspect anything if they didn't actually know what was going on, and that they would pick somebody up minutes after it happened. And this was a month before the supposed JFK assassination even happened, or around a month before. And that's exactly what happened. Exactly what they did.
Yep. And to emphasize what we're saying in the film, the FBI had to tell Kennedy about that recording. I mean, they had to. That's in the record. The FBI is under the president. That's who runs the FBI. They had to have given Kennedy that recording. He knew there was a hit out on him. He knew that the right-wing groups that James Miltier represented were also deeply associated with the mob and the CIA. And so he knew that these groups were kind of, what James Miltier represented is a three-way marriage between the right-wing groups, the mob, and the intelligence agencies. And Kennedy had come to realize through that recording, I believe, that he was in serious, serious trouble, and that he had peed off everybody. And in a panic, he decided to make a move that would save his family's life. Because what people don't understand is that the mob just doesn't kill you. That, if you really wrong the mob, and they thought because the Kennedys won the election because the mob had turned Illinois, i.e. Chicago, over in the 1960 vote. So the mob thought, hey, we got a guy in the White House now that owes us. That's how the mob works. You have favors and you get them back. And Kennedy's did not pay the favor back. In fact, they could be construed by the mob that they stabbed him in the back. So Kennedy had to find a way to not just save his own life from being killed by the mob, but he had to find a way to save his family's life. Because when the mob comes at you, when you've really done them bad, they kill your dog, they kill your kids, they kill your wife, then they kill you. So they really rub it in. And, this happens all the time. It just happened recently in Canada with that older couple that got killed mysteriously. They're billionaires. You can watch, you can see somebody was killing their pets, and it was slow progression towards them until they got it too. And so this is how they do it. If you really wrong them, they're really gonna come after you. And this is one of the reasons why the mob didn't deny it. They weren't sure who did it, and they're still not sure who did it in their mind, but they didn't want it denied because what power that gave them to know that everyone in the country thinks that they can assassinate the president of the United States in the town square and get away with it. And so they were perfectly fine with sitting with whatever the scenario really was.
Now, before we get into the possibility that Kennedy did indeed know that there was a hit on him, and he was going to take action on that. You also cover aspects of Oswald and his life that may not be known to a lot of people, and some interesting facts about what was going on that day with Oswald. Without giving away too much, would you be able to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's actually I can go I'll go a little further with the Oswald than I will with the rest. I don't want to be a spoiler. I want you guys to see it. Here's the thing. The explanation that we give is a film. So you have to watch it. It's not, you don't hear words, you want to watch the film. It's a film. And it's enhanced. It's a high quality 4K version. But what happened with Oswald is that, you know, he clearly, you know, was ordered to do stuff. He was clearly a spy. He had served time in Russia. He had a Russian wife. Russia was our biggest enemy, still is. And he comes back and everything's fine. He gets taken up by a guy named George de Mortscheld, who's a white Russian, who is anti-communist and a spy. And clearly Oswald, who can speak like 4 languages, is some kind of spy. And he's been told to take a job at the book depository. He doesn't know why. He's been told to take a long package with him to that day to work, so everybody can see him with this long package. You know, it's like, you can break the gun down, dude, and put it in a little suitcase. You don't have to carry a big package like this and then tell everybody that they're curtain rods. Why are you bringing curtain rods to work when you stack books all day? So anyway, it was clear that that as soon as the commotion started, he knew something was wrong, and he knew that he is probably the patsy. And he started, you know, went to the movie theater, basically what he did. And he was then arrested for the murder of J.D. Tippit. J.D. Tippit is a policeman in the Dallas police force, and his nickname on the Dallas police force was JFK, because he was a dead ringer for JFK, the real JFK. And so we have Oswald with this peculiar coincidence of killing 2 people, supposedly, on November 22nd, 1963 in Dallas, Texas, who look exactly like each other. What an incredible coincidence this is. And there's nobody denying this. I mean, it's a given fact that he looks like Kennedy. So then Oswald is arrested, and then absolutely, we show it in the film. It's outrageous. They publicly bring him into a press conference without formal charges or anything. And you would never do that. You would never do that. If you had a guy who was involved possibly in the murder of the president of the United States, he would be kept in confinement where you would question him and question him and question him until he falls down almost dead. And then you would get him back up, shake him, and start questioning him again. But you wouldn't bring him out and have the public look at him. So even that is bizarre. I've never even ever seen anything like that. Ever.
Yeah, that was for the public to drop the charges on him about the JFK assassination, right?
That's right.
That was the swayed public opinion,
Yep.
because Oswald was never arrested or even charged with the murder of the president of the United States. Right. He was charged for the murder of J.D. Tippit, which was a police officer that looked identical to JFK. Right. And then they paraded him around in the public, and then they made the public think that it was their idea that he also killed JFK as well. And then he is shot by Ruby before he can ever, get any defense or ever go to trial for the murder or ever even get any charges for the murder of JFK. So he died without ever revealing his secrets. And then Ruby, there's a lot of information about Ruby basically going out of his mind in his in the jail cell. And then he dies of cancer later on as well. We never reveal his side of the story either. And we have Ruby in the film talking about that these people that made him do it are in very high up places, that people will never know the truth surrounding his circumstances and the reason why he killed and shot Oswald. Right? So something's going on.
And also they did Dallas did a paraffin test on Oswald's arm and face and neck that day. And what you do is you rub paraffin on it, and it picks up traces of gunpowder. You put the paraffin under a microscope, you see if there's gunpowder embedded in the paraffin, right? And there was no gunpowder on his face or his neck. Just there was some here, but that could be from the books that he was working with. So Oswald never fired a rifle. Even the Dallas police know that. The Warren Commission knows that Oswald never fired a rifle, which brings up the other point, which we bring up in the film. How come no one reacts to a high-powered rifle going off? They're saying 3 shots. Conspiracy theorists say 2 shots from the grassy knoll. The government says 3 shots from the book depository. But even if you were firing 3 shots from the book depository, it would be echoing all through the cavernous buildings. You wouldn't even be able to tell where the shot was necessarily coming from, but it would be loud. It would be really loud. And nobody reacts at all to any shots. And
can you give me screen share capabilities, Chris?
Yeah, and you're talking about no one reacts to the shots from the Zapruder footage, right?
Yeah, but nobody reacts to the shots. If you look at pictures taken right after the so-called assassination of, the grassy knoll and all that, people were taking photographs, right? You don't see anybody, cowering down or anything.
See, this is a picture of Dealey Plaza, an overhead shot, and right here where my cursor is where Zapruder is filming the president in the motorcade, right? The conspiracy theorists say that there's a grassy knoll shooter right here that's right behind the fence, that's behind the pergola. Zapruder is right at the pergola, so the shooter would have to be behind Zapruder. And Zapruder is filming. There's no shakiness of the camera. There's nothing going on. No one's reacting to any gunshots. He's filming the president in the limousine going down super smooth. Everything is all good, and no one's reacting to anything.
That was very strange to me how smooth he was able to film the remainder of that motorcade without having a reaction like someone's being shot at.
Let me point out something else. So the average width of a 2-lane road is about 12 feet, okay? So if you take that road there, Elm Street, that's 12 feet. Now match that going forward towards where the grassy knoll shooter is. You're talking that the grassy knoll shooter is about 14 to 15 feet away from Elm Street. If he had a high-powered gun from 15 feet away, everybody in the whole place would hear it. Everyone would fall to the ground, and second thing they would do is look at who's shooting. And so he would be identified by the second time he fires the second shot. Everyone would have seen his face. And same thing with the book depository. If they heard it, they would have looked up and seen it. So it's just, these are questions that conspiracy theorists have seemingly forgotten to ask. I mean,
And now, that is interesting that you guys, even for research making this film, you couldn't find any outside footage of people looking fearful of their lives, ducking, acting like they heard a gunshot of any kind?
Nope. Not one person reported seeing anyone with a rifle anywhere around Dealey Plaza that day. Anywhere. Nobody reported seeing anybody. And here's the real kicker, and I wish this was in the film, but I found it later, and maybe if we ever revise it, I'll put it in. I asked myself about 3 weeks ago or so, what evidence did the Warren Commission have to say that there were 3 shots fired in Dealey Plaza? And I learned that a policeman had left his radio on his motorcycle, who was behind the motorcade. So the Dallas police were recording everything at the headquarters. And So I listened to that recording. I found it, listened to it, and I listened to it like 15 times, and I couldn't find anything that sounded like a clear, distinct gunshot. It's horns honking and motors and people talking and all that. And then I got so well, maybe I'm poor of hearing, and I can't hear. It's up above some range that I can't hear anymore. So then I started doing a deeper dive, and I found a 1980 report by the FBI. They did a complete acoustic analysis of that recording and concluded there were no gunshots on that recording. So I don't know what caused the Warren Commission to conclude that there were gunshots on there.
Now, let's get into some of the anomalies that you found with the Zapruder film, at least as much as we can without giving away too much of the film. What was it that you first noticed about the film that got you scratching your eyebrows, maybe threw up some red flags?
I'll just, you can take it after me, but what I first saw was when he supposedly grabbed his neck and there was no blood. That's when my alarm bell went up.
Ryder?
Sorry. So there's 2 splices in the Zapruder film, and I'm going to show the most important one. There's a splice at 133, but the most important splice occurs right as the limo goes behind the Stemmons Freeway sign at frame 207. It jumps from frame 207 to frame 212. There's 4 frames that are missing in the Zapruder film. And that was a big target because Jay is a filmmaker. He is an expert on physical effects. And he can tell you what that means when any filmmaker can really tell you what it means when there's a evidence splice in a film, right? That means that anything can be after that splice. So here is the Zapruder film splice at frame 207. 207 to 212.
There it is. There it is. And I mean, that's amazing that there's evidence of the president of the United States being shot, and there's a splice in the main body of evidence, and the Warren Commission is never told by Time Life that Time Life accidentally spliced the film for some reason. That's tampering with evidence.
Yeah.
And then also researcher Fred Newcomb as well has proven with a good degree of certainty that there is a slight change in the color balance after the splice. He found that the color of the film goes from a reddish tint to a bluish tint, and this would indicate that the blue tint, which occurs after the splice, has been put through some sort of optical printer, because Zapruder was using Kodachrome film, right? And Kodak only made 2 kinds of film: daylight Kodachrome film and indoor Kodachrome film, right? And the daylight Kodachrome film is more balanced towards the red, and the indoor Kodachrome film is more balanced towards the blue. So half the film is shot in indoor Kodachrome film, and then the other half after the splice is shot in a different kind of Kodachrome film. So,
and if you were running Kodachrome through an optical printer, you would have to use the indoor because it's an indoor light. It's not sunlight. So that's the telltale trigger that tells you that this has been run through an optical printer. And what we show, I don't show in the film, I speculate in the film that it's been put through what in those days was called a traveling mat. Remember, this was before digital. And so what they would do is they would put a piece of material around whatever they wanted to mat out. So they matted everything out but the limousine and the occupants. And then they kept it traveling and kept the mat going. And then they went back and they double exposed the background. Only they shrunk the limousine for reasons that we talk about in the movie, so that they could hide something going on. But the problem is now the people in the background are as big or even bigger than the people in the foreground, which is optically impossible.
That was a huge wow moment for me when I was watching that. That's obvious that the depth perception is incorrect there, and the people are larger than the ones in the limousine. That's crazy. That scene got a gasp when we showed it publicly. It was very gratified, but I heard the whole audience go, like they got it right when they saw it. And I think that's actually the killer moment in the movie. And now in retrospect,
I think that's the moment that people begin to realize, wait a minute, this is not how you're supposed to look through a lens. It's not, there's something wrong here. And it's just the beginning of things that are wrong with the whole thing.
You also covered aspects of the autopsy that didn't make sense as well.
Oh, show that, Ryder. Can you show the so we see there's a Zapruder film that Kennedy is shot here, right about here on the side of the head, and he flies back like that. So naturally, when we see the autopsy pictures that were taken, a couple hours later in D.C., we expect to see this wound here, a little closer examination of it. But that's not what we see. And this has never really been pointed out too much.
Yeah, this is the wound to the taken during the autopsy of Jake, which the autopsy is really strange in and of itself, because there was a bunch of arguments between the Dallas police and the Secret Service and the FBI of where JFK were to be autopsy. There was a bunch of fights and arguments about it, but it turned out that JFK was like whisked away. But the coroner in Dallas actually had the right and the legal precedent to autopsy JFK's body in Dallas, right? But the Secret Service said, no, let's take the body. And then it was whisked away onto Air Force One. And then it was taken to Bethesda Naval Hospital, where it was autopsied by doctors that did not have any idea what they were doing surrounding autopsies, right? And this photo shows a shot to the back of the head, no wound to the side of the face, which is really interesting when you watch the Zapruder film, and the shot comes from the right side and Kennedy's head goes back into the left. That's not what this autopsy photo shows. But what is interesting is that J.D. Tippit was claimed to be shot in the back of the head. So here is another autopsy photo where of JFK being shot in the back, and then guess who was also supposedly shot in the back? J.D. Tippit was also supposedly shot in the back. And then here is the big one. This is the big ringer right here.
No wound to the right side of the head at all, but clearly a wound to the back of the head. It's all swollen. You can see the stuff coming out. So, this is the incongruities that have not really been approached by the either the government or the conspiracy community.
The ears are different too. Yeah,
they are different. Thank you for noticing that. Even the haircut's different. But that's not JFK on the right. Sorry, you have to watch the movie to find out what's going on. But that's not JFK. I'm sorry, and it doesn't even really look like him. People, I used to do portrait photography. I really came to know faces really well, and the guy on the slab does not look like JFK. He looks a lot like JFK, but there's little glitches in there that indicate that he's not really. And we show in the movie, by the way, that 4 years after the assassination in 1967, JFK's body was exhumed from the Arlington Cemetery and moved for completely mysterious reasons.
No explanation was ever given for that. The removing of the president's body in the middle of the night, not telling anyone, right? It's pretty strange. Really odd that we show the pictures in the film of them doing that at the middle of the night.
You've also showed some very interesting recorded audio of Jacqueline Kennedy and LBJ, as well as some other tidbits that I had never heard before. Where did you find these audio clips?
Well, I was doing research for the script that we were going to do, and I was working 16 hours a day, or just between writing and finding all this weird stuff that I found. I could go on for a 2-hour show on stuff that we never talk about in the film that I discovered. And, then I found that audio and I was just like bowled over. And it was so obvious that, not only was Johnson flirting with Jackie 10 days after the assassination, and not only does LBJ give no comfort to Jackie about her husband just getting murdered right next to her, Jackie is just happy and just having a nice time. And she's actually now, in retrospect, after hearing it so many times, I now realize that Jackie's flirting with him too. So, you know, and then we pull out the little known case of Mary Pinchot Meyer, former wife of the head of the CIA, Cord Meyer, who was Kennedy's lover there near the end. And she was a beautiful socialite. And her murder, we cover the murder pretty closely. Her murder is just like one of the 10 months after the assassination of Kennedy. She's murdered in broad daylight, taking a walk down a very popular walking path in Washington, D.C., and there's nobody ever convicted of this murder. One of the people that's involved in that is right by her when she's murdered is a former CIA agent, or he may be not a former, and a reporter. Here's the call on the radio, because he's got one of those radios. He's the first guy there. He gets there. He finds Mary Pinchot Meyer on the towpath, and there's no blood. He reports no blood. He reported this in the Smithsonian Magazine. And you just start looking at all the high weirdness around what happened after the Kennedy the events of November 22nd, 63, and they all point towards the theory we're presenting as being highly credible.
You believe that the Kennedys were trying to ultimately thwart the mob from taking over everything. It doesn't seem like the mob is in the same type of control as it was during that time period. Seems like they've either been integrated into this evil corporate elitist system.
No, it's Godfather. Godfather 1 is the old mob. Godfather 2 is the new mob. The new mob is legit. They own businesses. They own casinos. They're legitimate businessmen. They're going to have their children run for office and the whole thing. And that's really the story of the mob. What it did after Kennedy assassination, they changed their ways. They went corporate. Meyer Lansky is the major force behind all of this. He's the brilliant person who came up with the idea. Why don't we just go legit? Bugsy Siegel, his best friend, said let's own Nevada and we'll buy up Las Vegas and turn it into our empire of legitimate businesses. And the rest is history. Now the mob is all the way in control. I think the events of 2020, the terrible thing that happened to the world there, and then the subsequent things that they were forcing on all of us, that's a mob hit. That threw a brick through your establishment window and then showed up the next day and said, hey, give us $100 a month and you'll never have to worry about it. Right? Well, that's what they did with us, with that terrible thing they did to us in 2020. They threw a brick through our collective window and then came a few months later and said, hey, we got a solution for you. Right? And it's to me, that was just, this is how the mob works today.
Yeah, they just basically been integrated into the three-letter agencies, government, politics, corporations. They're just part of it now. It's not, there's no deciphered split between the mob and what we would consider globalists.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly right. And the ruling families are mob families. Let's just be straight ahead about it. And the WEF is funded by the same families. They fund everything. They fund the CFR. They fund everything, and it's the same group of people funding everything. And money is their magical thing that they use, and woe be to anybody who crosses them.
Ryder, anything else to add that we didn't cover about the film yet?
Well, nothing that we mentioned in the film, but we do mention why didn't Trump release all the JFK files? Why hasn't any president or any governmental organization released all of the JFK files, which is a really important question. And that's really what we start this film out with. right?
Mm-hmm.
And I personally believe that what we show in the film is the reason why the JFK files can never be released, and why Trump decided to withhold a lot of those files, talking to Judge Politano, saying that he could never release these files to the public. And it has to be something big. It has to be something that no one has ever thought of before. It can't be things to do with technology like some people have thought about, that has something to do with highly advanced technology, although JFK was really good friends with the Secretary of the Navy, James Forrestal, as well, which James Forrestal was said to have been a part of this reverse engineering or the crashing of alien technology with the MJ-12 group as well. But that's not what it is. It doesn't have anything to do with advanced technology. It has everything to do with what we have presented in this film. That is really the only thing that it could possibly be that would completely unravel the United States, right? Because that's basically what Trump said to Judge Politano, right? He said that, you know, this is too damaging, right? It's too damaging and we can't release it, you know. And if it had anything to do with technology and advanced technology, they're already aware that the government has highly advanced technology, right? And it's more than likely all of our technology that's been blamed on extraterrestrials, right? So it's not that, right? And I just want to remind people that this film is not just another rehashing of old theories, right? Because when people think of a new JFK movie or a JFK documentary, I'm sure they're thinking, oh man, how many times can we just be hearing the same thing over and over and over again, that the CIA did it, that there was multiple shooters, that it wasn't Oswald, that it was the driver of the limousine that done it, that there was multiple shooters, multiple people were firing, that Jackie was the one that did it, and that's why the Zapruder film is altered, because she's the one that shot JFK in the head. You know, and this is something completely different, though we do go through all of the other theories basically in the first act of the film. And the second act is, Jay going over what we think actually really happened, and more than likely what really did happen that day. And it is a big shocker. And I really hope people watch it. It's very affordable. We made it a very affordable price at $1.99 to rent and $4.99 to buy. And I recommend buying it, because most people that I've sent it to that's watched it has watched it several times. Right? So it's easier just to buy it, because you're going to want to watch it over and over and over again.
You are, because it is, like I said, it's a film a film that explains the Kennedy assassination. It's a Zapruder film, so you got to watch it. You're finally going to see a high quality version, which we've never had before. That's in this film. It's 4K. We even have a slow motion version of it. We did everything we could to present this Zapruder film in the highest quality fashion that we could, and I think that you finally. And I think the incongruities that we show, like between the autopsy pictures and the Zapruder film itself, will show you that there's something wrong. And lastly, I think it has to be said that Trump is actually was really good friends with JFK Jr. They hung out in New York all the time. And if Trump actually saw the actual evidence, he may not have wanted to hurt the Kennedy family in any way. Because they were his friends. So that may be an aspect of all this too.
For the last few minutes that we have, I want to get your thoughts on the time period that we're about to head into. We're about to enter a very interesting time, especially when you look at who is going to be running for the presidency. We have a Kennedy back in the spotlight. I'd love to get each of your thoughts on the possibilities of the future. There's many that think that he is just another puppet for the New World Order. That's some that think that he's genuinely trying to make change up there. And there's some that think that even if he gets up there, that he would be silenced in some way just because you reach that level of the president being the president. So I'd love to get each of your thoughts on this.
Well, I think that it's really dangerous for this idea and this thought that the president doesn't matter. That's a really dangerous ideology to have, right? And but it's been made fun of. It's been made fun of a lot, right? It's turned into a joke, and that's what's degraded the position of president, and people thinking that the president has no power. I mean, first off, we had a celebrity in there with Trump, and they made fun of him a lot, and that degraded the position of power. Now we have Biden in there that can't string two sentences together properly, which is then again making fun of the presidency. So they're really trying to bring the presidency down to a level to where it doesn't even matter in the grand scheme of things, right? And that's a dangerous thought and idea to have. I think that that's the most dangerous thing that we could possibly do, right? And it's going to unravel our society as a whole if we keep going in that direction. And before I get into what I think is going to happen, I want to get Jay's thoughts.
Well, what's going to happen here is that Biden clearly yesterday got to beginning of the end for the Bidens. I believe that Biden will hang on all the way until 24, but he will not run. I believe they're going to put Michelle Obama. She's going to run, and I believe she's going to declare, she's going to open up about what's going on with her personally and who she really is. And they're all going to declare that she's the bravest person on earth, and she will probably win the election. The only one that can stop her is Trump, which is why they're trying to arrest Trump and doing all the things they are to Trump. So there's nobody that can stop Michelle but Trump. And I believe that all of the manipulation of the last 10 years regarding alternative sexuality is manipulation by the deep state to get us ready for Michelle, for exactly what Ryder just said, for the ultimate humiliation.
My thoughts are a little different on what's going to happen. I think that's a high possibility, but I think it's going to be a little different. I think that Trump is going to run again. He's going to get the entire country rallied behind him, and it's going to be Biden once again. And the joke is going to be made so heavily on Biden, it's going to seem like that it's going to be a huge landslide for Trump, right? There's no possible way in the world that Trump loses, because it's going to be both sides are going to basically be on Trump's side, right? And then they pull the switcheroo again. And this has already been set up perfectly with the election of 2020, right? People are already thinking that the election is, there's no point in doing the election because they're going to nominate and whoever's going to be president, regardless of who actually wins the popular vote, right? Or actually wins the nomination, they're going to skew it in their direction. So I think that what is going to happen is Trump is going to lose again. And we're going to see an event like January 6th, but on steroids. And this is my first time that I've ever talked about this publicly, because I don't like making predictions. I don't like talking about what I think is going to happen, because there's always that variable that it doesn't happen. And I don't really want to look like a fool. But if I were them and I was a psychological master and I was a puppeteer, that's exactly what I would do. I would make the American people think that it is their idea to destroy the country. And that is the easiest way to do it, because that's exactly what's going to happen. They can't just come out and destroy the country on their own, because then it'll be blamed on them. They have to do it in a way that flips it around on the citizens of the United States to make them look like the enemy. And the easiest way to do that is around the political spectrum, right? We've already got this huge division within the United States on political parties. And the easiest way to do it is to do exactly what they did in 2020 again, but just 100 times bigger.
You don't think that manipulating Michelle into the presidency and then having her announce that what she really is in public wouldn't absolutely cause this country to erupt in total disruption and flames?
I mean, it could, but that then makes us look like we're way worse than we actually are.
Exactly. With you're the intolerant ones, right?
Yeah, I think there's also a setup to have a spotlight on people that go against the mainstream narratives. They're already starting to deem people domestic terrorists. They're starting to try and pass laws to where if it seems like you're going against a certain or a narrative, or you're speaking against it, or you're saying something that doesn't go with the woke agenda, then you're considered a domestic terrorist, and then you can then have all your rights taken away.
Well, I mean, this is coming. We all probably agree on that. What we're doing here where I live is we're just going to create our own banks and our own financial system and grow our own food. And we're just not, if that's the way they want to play it, they want to weaponize everything we're doing. Well, we're just going to drop out completely. And it's a big movement right now of people doing that. And so we have to start thinking that way. We don't have to be in their financial system. We don't really even have to use their money, not really. And it's just, we all agree that that's the easiest way to do it. But listen, I'm old enough to remember Esperanto. Do you know what Esperanto was? Esperanto was a universal language that everyone was going to speak. And it came out in the 1970s, and the UN pushed it, and everybody pushed Esperanto or create a universal language. It went nowhere, and almost all their plans go nowhere. So they talk big, but you can look at their incongruities of what they're presenting, and it almost never makes any sense. They want an all-electric future, but they don't want to build any nuclear power plants or create any more electricity. They tell us that we have blackouts. Everything they say is completely contradictory to what reality dictates, and we're seeing it now for the first time, I think, on a mass level. And I think JFK X, Solving the Crime of the Century, available on Amazon Prime, is a one step towards this mass realization that we have been screwed. And the next two films that we're making are going to be even bigger. Each one's going to get bigger and be more elaborate about how we have been completely and utterly manipulated by huge, large forces, starting with the Kennedy assassination.
Now, last question. Speaking of being hugely manipulated on a mass scale, are we going to see a fake alien invasion within our lifetime?
It could be. I don't know. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
They're ramping it up, man. They're ramping it up.
Yeah. I never seen anything like that. I watched the whole thing. I was like, really? First off, they're admitting that they're moving money around, and but money for projects aren't going to those, they're going over here. I was blown away by that part. Then when it gets down to the particulars of the aliens and all that, then the language gets vague. And, oh yeah, I heard from somebody that's true. It's like, wait a minute here. So there was part of those hearings which were really amazing, and part of them was a complete psyop.
Thoughts, Ryder?
I think that there's no way that they could pull off an alien invasion with the way that people think that it's going to go down with this Project Bluebeam nonsense. That's not what Project Bluebeam is. It's not a holographic simulation outside of your body. Project Bluebeam was actually an MK Ultra sub-project that was called Project Blue Bolt, and that was to literally subliminally, artificially put the holographic image directly into the subject's head. So they're seeing it inside of their head. It's not external to them. It's happening inside of their head. Right? And that's the only way that you would be able to get away with it. You can't just put something external that's not real outside of somebody, because we have phones now. We have, camera equipment. We have people that can communicate with people on the other side of the planet. And if everything isn't going on everywhere, then there's going to be discrepancies with that. right? It's almost an impossible task. The only way that they could really pull it off is if they use their own highly advanced technology. You never see the aliens. There's no photographs or footage of the actual aliens that's supposedly doing it. It's our own advanced, highly advanced anti-gravity craft, and it is legitimately killing people, and it is legitimately destroying cities and blowing things up. That's the only way that they can do it. They can't do it in a fake way. It has to be real, but not real in the way that they think that it's real, or fake in the way that they think that it's fake, right? So that's my thoughts, and that's the only way that they'll be able to pull it off.
We live in interesting times. Go ahead, Jay.
Just in closing, it's not having the effect. Yesterday did not have the effect that they thought it would. It's just a big nobody's paying any attention to it because no one believes a friggin' word they say. Right. That's what you've done to yourselves, you idiots, the last 3 years.
Yeah, that has to be it, because the lulled reaction from people, the reaction of just meh, it doesn't really matter. I think that 2 or 3 years ago could have been a lot different. But they screwed everything up by trying to rush their psychological COVID operation, that they lost everyone during that. So,
well, when my mild-mannered wife is going over and over, bullshit, that that nobody believes it, because she doesn't care anything about UFOs.
Yeah, we're at definitely interesting times. All right, Ryder, Jay, great film. I will have the link, the Amazon link, right in the description. And one more time, where can they find all of each of your content?
You can find me on Raised by Giants on YouTube and any of the podcast platforms, and on the Forbidden Knowledge News Network and all the other alternative platforms as well. I'm doing a series right now on UFO cults, which is a very interesting series. We see where all of these thoughts and these theories and these ideas that are constantly being regurgitated in the community, even nowadays. So if you'd like to check that out on Raised by Giants on any of the podcast platforms and all of the alternative media platforms and on YouTube. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I have a show on YouTube, Reality Check. Just type in Jay Weidner, Reality Check. I also have a site, jweidner.com, with all my free stuff. And you can find all of my films on Amazon and Gaia.
Fantastic, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Great film, and we will talk again soon. Till next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We will talk again tomorrow. See y'all then.